In the cold silence of space, Earth hung like a forgotten ornament, scarred, battered, and left behind. They had called it a verdict of peace, a necessary sanction. But for Daniel Reich, captain of the Archangel, it was exile, pure and brutal. The Galactic Council had dressed it up with ceremonial speeches, diplomatic pleasantries, and artificial regret. But at the end of the day, they had shoved an entire species out of the galactic core and slammed the door behind them. Daniel still remembered the moment humanity's access to hyperlane corridors had been revoked. One by one, the jump gates surrounding Earth had blinked red, then black. No ships in, no ships out. Trade stopped. Support stopped. The ambassadors never returned. Even the synthetics, the Council's beloved neutral emissaries, shut down their relays and left orbit. Earth was alone. The reason? An incident on Cygnus 9, a mining colony jointly operated by humans and Threxian laborers. A brawl turned deadly. A Threxian noble's son got himself impaled by a human exosuit. An accident, Daniel had read in the logs, though no one seemed to care. That one death unraveled everything. The Council held trials that made a mockery of justice. Earth's representatives were silenced, ignored, voted down at every turn. And then came the verdict. Indefinite suspension from the galactic network, reclassification, isolated origin species. To them, humanity was a problem that needed to be quarantined. But they forgot one thing. Humans don't die quietly. The Archangel was built during that bitter silence, a super-heavy interstellar cruiser held together by desperation and anger. Not sanctioned by any Earth government, because those had collapsed in the aftermath. It was born out of the ashes by scrap engineers, rogue physicists, deserter admirals, and exiled scientists, a Frankenstein of metal, plasma, and resolve. Daniel stood at the forward observation deck, staring into the endless dark. His face was weathered beyond his 38 years, deep-set eyes scanning the horizon like he expected the stars to blink out on him. A scar ran from his temple to his jawline, a souvenir from the riots in New Geneva during the Food War. He wore no uniform anymore, just black fatigues and a thick coat lined with shielding mesh. Out here there were no dress codes, only survival. Behind him, the ship pulsed with life. Half of it was crewed by trained officers, the rest by former prisoners, mercs, and people who had lost everything. A ship of orphans and outcasts. Yet it moved like a beast, unyielding and hungry. The comms crackled. "Captain, we've completed the scan of Sector 8 Gamma. Derelict Threxian freighter found. Looks ripe." Daniel didn't smile, but his voice tightened with something cold and dangerous. "Send boarding teams. Take everything. Leave a message." He didn't need to elaborate. They knew what he meant. Burn a mark into the hull. A jagged human handprint with 3 words in old Earth script. "We remember everything." The Council believed exile would break them. That without trade and tech and treaties, Earth would rot back into the dirt. But all it did was harden them. They started building their own gates, jury-rigged with stolen schematics and parts scavenged from the black market. They started forging alliances with the fringes, the species the Council deemed undesirable, primitive, volatile. And slowly, system by system, humanity began to spread. Not through diplomacy, but through power, through calculated raids, ruthless ambushes, and offers too tempting to refuse. "Let us dock, or we burn your moons." That was the new diplomacy. Daniel didn't care for peace anymore. Peace was what got them stabbed in the back. He cared for one thing, making sure the stars knew humanity was not dead, only waiting. And they were done waiting. As the Archangel turned its engines toward the next system, a trade route near the Merak cluster, Daniel's thoughts drifted to the council members who had stood against him at the last tribunal. The way they spoke in riddles and fake concern, smiling as they voted him and his kind out of existence. One day, he thought, one day we'll return. But not to beg, not to explain, to conquer. He turned from the observation deck and walked to the bridge. Set course, he said. Next target's a fuel depot. Council-backed. Make it loud. Because if they wouldn't listen to reason, they would learn to fear the sound of vengeance coming with human engines screaming through space. The silence before the strike was always the worst part. Daniel sat in the command chair of the Archangel, fingers drumming on the steel armrest as the ship cruised under full cloak through the edge of the Merak cluster. Before them lay a fuel depot, CXS-7, a council-controlled facility orbiting an asteroid belt rich with plasma-grade ventonite, the kind of place that kept their fleets running, their empires floating. It was manned by low-tier species under contract and guarded by 3 patrol frigates, nothing fancy. It was supposed to be safe, unimportant. That was their first mistake. Status? Daniel asked. Lieutenant Merrick, his weapons officer, didn't turn from his station. Cloak holding at 98%. Their sensors haven't picked up a damn thing. No distress signals. They're in the dark. And the boarding crew? Gearing up. Alpha and Bravo squads, 40 heads total. They want this one bad. Daniel nodded. Let them have it. No prisoners, no warnings. There was no applause, no rallying cry, just the cold, unspoken agreement that this was justice. Not diplomacy, not warfare, retribution. He closed his eyes for a moment. Behind them, Earth still burned, not with fire, but with rot. Half the planet was unlivable now. The weather systems had collapsed. Food was rationed by bullets. Nations turned on themselves when the galactic supply chains were cut. The weak died in the streets. The strong looted what they could. And the council? They called it natural selection. Said Earth had failed to demonstrate sufficient moral alignment for reintegration. Like they were some lab experiment gone wrong. But Earth didn't die. It adapted, and now they were out here, in their rusting, weaponized graveyard of a ship, and still moving forward. Ready jump pods, Daniel said. The Archangel tilted slightly as its lower bays opened. Twin pods, armed with hull-piercing drives and carrying 20 warriors each, dropped from the undercarriage like silent sharks in the black ocean of space. 30 seconds to impact. Daniel stood and walked to the viewport, watching the depot slowly rotate beneath them like a helpless animal. This was the second strike in a chain. First was the Threxian freighter, stripped, tagged, and left adrift. Now this. After this, it would be a comm relay station in neutral territory. They weren't just striking back. They were carving a path. Each move designed to send a message. We are no longer asking. The pods hit. The feed lit up on screen. Helmet cams flickered as the crews breached the depot's hull, storming the corridors. Shouts in multiple languages filled the comms. Weapons fire, screams, the buzz of electrified blades tearing through Council security bots. But Daniel's eyes were fixed on one thing, a corner cam showing the station overseer, a Valari bureaucrat with 2 sets of eyes and a gut full of privilege, curled behind a console, stammering into a comms unit that wasn't connected. Daniel turned off the feed. 10 minutes later, Merrick's voice came through. It's done. All ours. Station secure. Fuel cells intact. We've tagged it. Daniel didn't ask for a body count. Didn't need to. Detonate the backup drives. Leave the main reactor untouched. Let them come for what's left. Then he walked down to the lower decks. He liked to be present when his crew returned. It wasn't about celebration. It was about respect. The boarding party staggered in, armor scorched, blood-slicked boots clanging on the floor, eyes hollow but hungry. Some carried spoils, alien tech, council data slates, stolen rations. Others just dragged wounded comrades across the metal floor without speaking. Marek approached. His face was pale, but his voice was steel. They had children in the service decks. Daniel paused. Civilians? Contract families? Not council-born? Mixed species? And? We neutralized the threat. No survivors. Daniel stared at him for a moment, and finally nodded. It's not our job to parent the galaxy. The Council made the rules. We just follow their example. Marek didn't reply. He just walked away, helmet tucked under one arm, blood streaked down his cheek. That night, Daniel sat alone in his quarters, replaying the data from the raid. The more he watched, the more numb he became. The way the station personnel screamed, the way some begged in tongues his translator didn't recognize, the way one little creature, something between a rodent and a child, crawled over a dead overseer's body, reaching for a dropped med kit. He forced himself to watch it twice. You don't get to look away, he told himself, not if you're the one giving the orders. But beneath the numbness, something else stirred. Not guilt, not pity, resolve. This is the price, he thought, for what they did to us, for every Earth child that starved because they shut down our agri chains, for every colony that rotted when they pulled their medics and left us to die of the red fever, for every voice that was ignored in those chambers, every plea mocked. We were forced to become this. His thoughts were broken by a knock, heavy, insistent. The door slid open to reveal Commander Ray, his second in command. A wiry woman with the eyes of a crow and hands that shook only when she wasn't holding a weapon. We've intercepted council chatter, she said, stepping inside. They've noticed. 3 fleets on alert, one already rerouted to patrol this sector. Daniel leaned forward. Where's it headed? Toward the relay station, our next hit. He smiled, and it wasn't kind. Good, let them come. She hesitated, then added, There's more. A message, encrypted, old Earth code, from deep space. Daniel's body tensed. What kind of code? Military, obsolete, but human. Definitely human. He rose. Bring it to the bridge. Wake the AI. Full decryption. 20 minutes later, the bridge lights dimmed as the AI core spun up. The ship's main screen flickered with static before settling into green script. Priority read. Signal origin, unknown sector, 01199. XOR, message follows. To any human vessel receiving this, we survived. They didn't wipe us all. We're out here. We're building something bigger, something they can't stop. Find us. End transmission. The room went dead silent. Daniel stood frozen, pulse pounding. He knew that code. It was from the old interstellar navy, long before the Council had strangled Earth's fleets. It was supposed to be dead tech, useless, buried with the last of the old admiralty during the collapse. Ray stepped forward. If that message is real, there are other survivors, outposts, fleets like ours. Daniel's voice was like gravel. Number not like us, stronger, maybe bigger. They've been hiding. She leaned in. Do we respond? He turned to Marek. Trace the signal source. Marek frowned. That might take days. We'll have to triangulate with jump patterns. And if the Council's watching those same bands, they'll know we got the message too. Then we move fast. We strike the relay station, draw their eyes there, and in the chaos we vanish toward the signal. And if it's a trap? Marek asked. Daniel's eyes hardened. Then we show them what Exile taught us. No one argued. Outside, the stars kept spinning. The Council kept sleeping in their palaces, confident that humanity was beaten, scattered, licking its wounds in some dark corner of space. But they were wrong, because Exile had not broken Earth. It had reforged it. They struck the relay station like a hammer falling through glass. Relay Theta 4, perched above a desolate rock in the Kurnos Reach, wasn't built to withstand siege. It was a glorified communications array, a whispering post between trade lanes. Protected by one Council patrol corvette and a few orbital drones, its purpose was simple: relay orders, monitor chatter, and remind the lesser systems that the Council was always listening. Until Archangel made sure they stopped hearing anything at all. Daniel watched from the bridge as missiles lanced forward from their ship's belly, searing through vacuum in absolute silence before striking the station's outer shield. The shield held for 3 seconds. Then it cracked like old bone. The second barrage followed immediately, not for show, but for destruction. Structural points, power banks, comm spires. They weren't here to capture this one. They were here to erase it. "Status?" Daniel barked. Marek was a blur of efficiency at the console. "Drones disabled. Corvette is retreating. They're calling for backup." "Let them. They'll be late." He moved to the side screens. A live feed showed the relay station breaking apart, internal fires spewing into the void, airlocks ripped open. No boarding parties this time. No marks left behind. This was a surgical burn. Total blackout. He knew the message this would send. Someone out there still had teeth. Someone out there didn't just want justice. They wanted blood. Good. The moment the last piece of the station flared into white-hot debris, Daniel turned to Ray. "Jump drive status?" "Charged and holding. Then jump us. Now full burn to sector 01199X. There was a moment's pause. Marek looked up. "We've never been out that far. That's fringe territory. Past the rim. No charts, no friendly routes." Daniel gave him a stare that stopped questions cold. "We weren't invited to the galaxy. We don't need permission to explore it." With a hum that vibrated in the bones, the Archangel vanished into the dark. The jump lasted 17 minutes. Not long in real space, but time seemed to stretch in jump space. The stars warped, bent like glass underwater. Men often went mad staring out windows during a jump, so Daniel had those sealed. No one needed more ghosts in their heads. When they dropped out, the galaxy looked different. Sector 01199X was dead quiet. No planetary beacons, no patrols, no signs of civilization. Just scattered asteroids, radiation belts, and a dying sun on the edge of collapse. It was a graveyard, beautiful but lifeless, until they picked up the ping. Faint, distorted, but real. "Coordinates," Daniel said, walking to the sensor bank. Ray tapped into the signal. "There, something's embedded in the second moon of that gas giant. Looks buried." "A facility?" "Number A ship." Daniel's heart thudded. They approached cautiously. As they neared the moon's surface, the shape took form. A massive structure fused into the rock itself. Ancient in design, but unmistakably human. Not Council approved, not regulation. Built in secret, maybe decades ago, maybe more, and not alone. Around it floated other ships, smaller than Archangel, but bristling with weaponry. 10, maybe 12, forming a loose perimeter. The sensor readouts flickered, some kind of cloaking interference. Then a message came through, not on any public channel, but directly into their encryption stream. "Identify yourselves or be fired upon. You've entered restricted territory." Daniel stepped forward. "This is Captain Daniel Reich of the warship Archangel. Origin, Earth. Exiled by Council Order 44 Kappa. We received your signal." A long pause. Then the voice returned, calmer, older, like gravel under iron. "Welcome to Bastion. We've been waiting." Docking took 30 minutes. Tensions were high. No one trusted easily this far from home. As Daniel stepped onto the platform, He was met by a man built like an armored tank, weathered with deep lines across his face and eyes that had seen more death than years. The insignia on his chest wasn't official. It was homemade, a stylized phoenix over a broken world. "Commander Joran Velt," the man said, extending a gloved hand. "Or what's left of him. I was First Fleet before the collapse." Daniel gripped it hard. "Daniel Reich, captain of the Archangel. I didn't think anyone survived out here." "We didn't survive," Velt said grimly. "We endured." He led Daniel through a metal corridor lit by old plasma lines and patchwork wiring. Soldiers passed them with hollow stairs and old gear. The smell of oil and sterilizer was thick. This was no utopia. This was a fortress, carved out of exile and madness. They reached a central chamber where a projection of the galaxy hovered. Red marks, the Council's territory. Green, fringe systems. And then, in blue, a web of hidden paths leading from this moon outward. "You've been building," Daniel said. "For 23 years, Velt nodded. "We saw what the Council was doing long before Earth got the boot. We went dark, faked our destruction, hid our ships, started recruiting from the broken edges." Daniel looked at the map again. "And now?" "Now," Velt's voice darkened. "Now we've got a fleet. A real one. Not enough to win, not yet, but enough to hurt them. Badly." He turned. "Your relay strike, it lit up every Council sensor grid. They're on alert. That was risky." Daniel stepped closer. "Everything we do is risky. They cut us off, left us to rot. Earth's a husk, and I won't spend the rest of my life scavenging scraps in the dark. We're taking something back." Velt studied him. "You've got fire," he said. "But fire without aim burns everything. We've seen others like you, raiders, pirates, vengeful ghosts. You want revenge, I want a war." Daniel didn't blink. "Then show me how to fight it." They spent the next few days sharing data. Velt's operation was deeper than Daniel expected. They had ex-Council tech, rogue AI units, even a working prototype of a gate disruptor, a weapon capable of collapsing Council jump lanes in transit. Suicide missions had bought them blueprints. Every ship was repurposed from wreckage. Their engineers were more chemist than scientist, improvising in ways no bureaucracy would allow. "We call ourselves the Bastion," Velt explained, "because this is the last stronghold of free humanity." "And the others?" Daniel asked. "There are others," Velt confirmed. "Scattered, hidden. Some went feral, others sold out. You'll find slavers who speak Earth tongue, mercenaries who wear our colors but work for the highest bidder. But us? We still fight for Earth." Daniel stared at the map, at the old data streams showing the Council's border fleets, their academy planets, their war factories. "Then give me a target," he said. Velt grinned. "That's the spirit." The mission was named Operation Cinderfall, a munitions world. Council designation, Valus Prime. Not critical, not fortified, but symbolic. It supplied weapons to 3 major fleets, including the ones hunting exiled human ships. And more importantly, it was considered impenetrable. Until now. Bastion had the codes, Archangel had the firepower. Together they had a chance. Daniel stood once again on his bridge, watching as the new fleet formed behind him. Not hundreds of ships, not yet, but dozens, silent, deadly, carved from betrayal and welded with fury. "Make no mistake," he told his crew, his voice grim and steady. "This isn't about survival anymore. This is about the future. They tried to erase us. Now we write the next chapter in blood." Lights dimmed, engines roared, and humanity, exiled, broken, enraged, prepared to strike back at the galaxy that left them to die. The night before the assault on Valus Prime, Daniel Reich didn't sleep. Sleep was a luxury, and he didn't believe in luxuries. Not anymore. Not when his ship was docked to a covert Bastion cruiser and orbiting just beyond Council sensor range, less than 12 hours from a planetary siege. He paced the dim bridge of the Archangel, boots echoing on the steel. The usual ambient lights were off, and only the crimson glow from the war map kept the shadows at bay. The system rotated before him, Velis Prime and its moons. Council scans said it was nothing special, but the Bastion's intelligence proved otherwise. 3 weapons facilities buried deep under polar ice, automated rail networks feeding orbital cannons, supply ships moving every 6 hours like blood through arteries. It was more than a munitions depot. It was a machine of war. "Still breathing, Captain?" Daniel turned. Ray stood in the doorway, arms crossed. She'd shed her usual tactical vest and now wore just a combat harness over a plain black shirt, her face half lit by the soft map glow. Her eyes, sharp and calculating, were unreadable. "Barely," Daniel muttered. "You?" She shrugged. "Been through worse," Daniel smirked. "Have you?" "No," she admitted. "But I'm getting used to the taste of suicide." He walked to the side viewport, peering out at the black void between their fleet and Velis Prime. "This isn't suicide. This is a message." "To who?" "The Council?" she asked. "They won't hear it. They'll just tighten their grip." Daniel looked over his shoulder. "Then we speak louder." At 0400 hours ship time, the fleet moved. Archangel led the charge, flanked by Bastion warships, the Dagger, Hollow Sun, and Calros. Smaller frigates darted behind them like wolves guarding the pack. The plan was madness: divide and overwhelm. Strike 3 different points at once, force the Council to split their defense protocols. Daniel took his command seat, strapped in, and gave the order with a calm that didn't match the fire boiling inside. "Commence Operation Cinderfall." Engines screamed into life. The ships slipped from their shrouds, breaking from the dark like phantoms. Within minutes, alarms lit up across Velis Prime. The planet's defense grid activated, but too late. Their perimeter satellites, meant to warn them hours in advance, had been disabled days before by Bastion saboteurs. Within 60 seconds, orbital skirmishes erupted. Marek's voice echoed across the bridge. Engaged defensive platforms, their AIs scrambling responses. 1, maybe 2 autofleets coming online. "Let them come," Daniel growled. "We're not leaving." Missiles streaked toward them, hundreds of them, fast, smart, and designed to confuse ECM systems. But Archangel wasn't just any warship. Her hull had been restructured with stolen alien alloys, and her AI had been trained not for defense, but prediction. "Interceptors now!" Daniel snapped. The hull pulsed. Flak cannons fired in rhythmic bursts, intercepting a swarm of incoming warheads with surgical precision. The rest, those few that made it through, glanced off armor, leaving fire streaks but no holes. "Railgun online," Marek confirmed. Daniel didn't hesitate. "Target that supply artery. Bring it down." The sound of the railgun, deep and metallic, like the roar of some ancient beast, filled the ship as a tungsten slug tore from its housing and pierced atmosphere. They watched as it slammed into the planetary rail line, the impact blooming like a rising sun across the pole. Ray whistled. "That's going to take years to rebuild." "Good," Daniel said. "Let them feel every second of it." Meanwhile, on the ground, Bastion's drop teams made landfall. The operation was raw, brutal, and costly. Ice cracked under the heat of retro thrusters as soldiers dug their boots into the frozen crust of Velis Prime. They weren't elite Marines or biomodified warriors. They were veterans, survivors, and fanatics, men and women with nowhere else to go and nothing left to lose. Their objectives were simple: breach the 3 facilities, destroy the fabrication cores, and leave behind a calling card. Daniel watched it unfold via helmet cams fed directly to the bridge. He saw Bastion troops laying charges in fuel silos. He saw Council defenders retreating under heavy fire, caught off guard by an enemy they thought extinct. He saw his people, Earth's forgotten, carving their legacy into frozen ground with blood and flame. And then came the last transmission. A Bastion soldier, helmet cracked, face bloodied, stood in the heart of the munitions chamber as sirens wailed. Behind him, detonators blinked red, strapped to every wall. This is for New Geneva, for Riyadh, for Mexico Sector 9, for the children they let starve. We were exiled, we adapted, we endured, and now? He smiled. Now we end you. He triggered the detonators. The entire northern facility erupted into white fire. The explosion rippled through the planet's atmosphere like a tear in fabric. The Council fleet finally arrived 40 minutes later. Too late. Their ships dropped out of hyperspace like vultures circling a corpse, but Bastion's operation was already complete. The fleet withdrew, not in panic, but with precision, scattering in different directions, confusing enemy sensors, using routes unknown to the standard Council fleet charts. Archangel went dark the moment it exited the battle zone. A jump gate, installed secretly by Bastion engineers on the far edge of the system, served as their exit route. Back aboard, Daniel sat in silence as the ship cruised into safe space. The crew was exhausted, wounded, but not defeated. The images from the battle replayed in his mind. Not the explosions, not the victory. The faces, the ones who didn't make it back, the ones who believed in something more than just survival. He turned to Marek, who leaned heavily on his station, one arm wrapped in a blood-stained bandage. "Casualties?" Daniel asked. 57 confirmed dead. 38 wounded. Bastion lost over 100. Daniel nodded slowly. "Worth it?" Marek didn't flinch. "Every damn second of it." Daniel rose from his chair and stepped to the main screen, now filled with encrypted messages pouring in from outer sectors. Praise, warnings, offers of alliance, some from other human ships, some from alien species the Council had long cast aside. The galaxy had noticed. "They're watching now," Ray said quietly, joining him. "They can't ignore us anymore." "No," Daniel said, "but they'll try." He leaned forward, eyes fixed on the holographic star map. "Then we give them more. More fear, more doubt. Every system we burn, every outpost we hit. It carves our name into their skulls. We don't stop. Not until Earth has a seat at the table they tried to flip over." Ray looked at him sideways. "You're building something bigger than revenge." "I have to," he whispered, "because if we're not building, then we're just another dying species screaming into the void." She didn't argue. They stood there a moment longer, captains of a ghost fleet, warriors exiled from civilization, now rising as the sharpest thorn in the galaxy's throat. And they weren't done yet, because fire had been lit, not just on Velis Prime, but across the stars. The silence after victory was worse than the battle. Daniel stood alone in the observation deck of Archangel, eyes fixed on the distant flicker of Velis Prime's sun. It burned steady, indifferent to the violence that had erupted in its orbit days earlier. To a star, a war meant nothing. But to the Council, it had meant everything. Reports flooded in. Velis Prime was in chaos, supply lines severed, manufacturing crippled, emergency defense protocols activated across neighboring systems. The Council's precious illusion of order cracked. But what disturbed Daniel most was what came after. A message. Short. Unencrypted. Delivered directly to Archangel's primary channel through a bounce relay that only someone on the inside could have accessed. "Stop now. You've made your point. Go any further, and you'll unleash something you can't contain. No signature, no origin, just a warning, or a threat. Ray entered the deck, boots soft on the floor. She carried a data slate and a look that told Daniel things weren't getting better. Council's issued a decree, she said without ceremony. Humanity is now classified a rogue threat species. Daniel didn't react. They're using the attack on Valus Prime to justify deploying their black fleets, she added. That made him look at her. Black fleets? He asked. Those are myths. Not anymore. Bastion confirmed sightings near Sarian's Reach. Heavily cloaked, no insignia, no distress channels. Just weapons. Daniel exhaled slowly. So, they're done pretending we don't exist. They want to erase us before others start believing in us. He turned back to the stars. Then we hit them again. Ray hesitated. We need to think this through. We're not just fighting warships anymore. We're fighting a system that built itself over centuries. One more mistake, and they'll call for extermination. Let them, Daniel said. They already tried. Earth's proof of that. She stepped closer, lowering her voice. We started something, Daniel. A movement. People are watching. Even alien factions. You want fear? Good. But if we don't lead this right, we become exactly what they said we were. He looked at her, and for the first time in days, something flickered in his eyes. Not doubt, but memory. The streets of old Boston during the blackout riots, the food riots, children killed for protein bars, mothers selling everything to get off-world visas that never came. That's what the Council had left behind. You think I want this? He asked, voice rough. You think I enjoy burning planets, sending people to die? I was an engineer, Ray. I wanted to build things. But the Council gave us no choice. They slammed the door and called it justice. If we don't fight, then all of this, everything we've done, was for nothing. She didn't answer. There was nothing to say. Later that cycle, Daniel met with Commander Velt in Bastion's encrypted comms chamber. Velt looked older than before, not in body, but in bearing. There were new scars across his neck, faint burns that told a story Daniel didn't ask about. I got your message, Daniel said. What's the urgency? Velt brought up a star map. The Council's mobilizing in the Cinder Expanse. That's neutral territory. They're hunting. For us? For all of us, and not just humans. They've started purging fringe species. Anyone suspected of harboring humans gets blacklisted. Some get sterilized. Daniel's fists clenched. They're forcing neutrality out of everyone, Velt continued. Even the merchant clans are folding. Only a few are resisting. Then we give them a reason to resist, Daniel growled. We hit something bigger. Velt gave him a hard look. You want to escalate? I want to wake the galaxy up. They've been asleep too long. Velt nodded. Then I have something. Council Archive Station Epsilon. Deep core, classified data vaults. If we can get in, we'll find black files. Files they never wanted public. What kind of files? Proof of what they did to Earth, to colonies, to defectors, executions, biological tests, forced starvation protocols. If we leak that, the galaxy might finally see them for what they are. Daniel stared at the screen. Coordinates? Velt uploaded them. It won't be easy. Epsilon is protected by protocol wards. No ships, no orbiting. Only one way in, through their transport network. We'll need someone on the inside. Daniel thought for a moment. I know a man, a council traitor. He owed me once. Might still be breathing. Velt grunted. Then find him, and fast, before they bury that archive in a sun. Back aboard Archangel, Daniel called a private meeting with his core crew. Marek. Ray. Silo, the mechanic who once designed weapons for the Council before they tried to kill his family. And Kaz, a former trader who'd lost everything to Council asset seizures, and now flew like death itself. He laid out the mission. No one flinched. But Kaz leaned forward. "You sure this is worth it, Captain?" "This archive crap? We've done more damage with fire than we'll ever do with secrets." Daniel didn't look away. "Secrets built this galaxy, Kaz. Council doesn't rule through strength. They rule through silence. We break that silence. We break their grip." Ray added, "The galaxy's teetering. Most don't care about humans, but they care about justice. Truth. If we show them how deep the rot goes, we won't be fighting alone." Kaz cracked his knuckles. "Then let's go digging." The search for the traitor, Geran Voss, took them 3 days. He was living under a false name in a mining colony on Telon 8, drinking himself to death and pretending not to care about the universe anymore. Daniel found him in a bar full of broken men, wearing a fake face and a broken spine brace. "You should have killed me the last time," Geran hissed when Daniel confronted him. "You should have died with dignity," Daniel replied. But he offered a deal, not mercy. Never mercy. Only one last job, and a promise: help them infiltrate Archive Epsilon, and whatever secrets they found would make Geran untouchable, even if the Council survived. "You really believe the truth matters?" Geran asked, coughing. Daniel looked him dead in the eye. "Number but fear does. And the truth is the only thing left that still scares them." As Archangel prepared for the next jump, Daniel stood again in the observation bay, watching the stars shift slowly. He felt it, something changing, not just in him, in the crew, in the galaxy. They weren't just fighting for survival anymore. They were building a legacy, one scar at a time. The sky above Station Epsilon looked like oil, dark, slow-moving, and ready to ignite. Daniel stared through the cracked window of the stolen Council transport ship, his jaw clenched tight. Epsilon spun below them in perfect formation, a pristine white sphere with no visible openings, no docking ports, no landing bays. It hovered in space like a pearl grown in darkness, beautiful, sterile, and impossible to breach without permission. But that's what Geran Voss was for. He sat across from Daniel, hunched in the pilot's chair, hands trembling slightly. Not from fear, but from years of abuse and whatever low-grade stims he used to keep himself going. Once, Geran had been the head of security algorithms for the Council's Data Integrity Division, the man who designed the very locks they now planned to pick. "Approach vector locked," Geran muttered. A eye handshake initiated. "They'll think we're a medical logistics vessel returning from Cygnus 7. "And they won't scan deeper?" Ray asked, tight-lipped. Geran gave a dry chuckle. "Not unless they're sober, which none of them are, I assure you. Most of the inner core operators drink their lunch." Daniel didn't relax. "How long do we have?" 2 hours. Once we're inside the shell, internal monitors will go blind for about 7 minutes. That's our window to disappear. After that, if we're caught, well, you're familiar with the Council's definition of mercy." Daniel looked back toward the rear of the ship, where Merrick and Silo were checking gear. Compact charges, anti-sensor suits, neural dampeners. Nothing bulky, nothing loud. This wasn't a siege. It was a surgical ghost raid. As they drifted closer, the ship shuddered gently, a sign they'd passed the first of Epsilon's perimeter scans. Geran held up a small key made from black glass and placed it into the console. The moment it clicked, the ship lurched. Daniel reached for his sidearm on instinct. "Relax," Geran muttered. "The shell's opening." Indeed, from below, the perfect surface of the station began to segment. Small panels pulling away, revealing a narrow shaft lined with magnetic tethers. "A coffin chute," Geran whispered. "They only use it for bodies they don't want traced. I figured they wouldn't miss one." Daniel gave him a look. "You're a twisted bastard." "You're the one who came to me, Captain." They descended in near total silence. Once inside the shaft, gravity shifted, locking their boots to the side wall. Ray led the way, planting a small sensor disruptor every 15 meters, just enough to break the station's passive scanning rhythm without triggering a full alert. Marek carried the pulse carbine. Silo had the charge packs. Daniel moved last, sweeping their trail clean. The interior of Station Epsilon was nothing like Daniel expected. There were no guards, no drones, just sterile white corridors lined with sealed doors, each with a numeric code and no labels. The kind of design that only made sense to machines. It was quiet. Too quiet. Duran directed them through an auxiliary maintenance shaft. "All paths converge at the central core," he whispered, "but the data vault sits 20 levels down. We need to bypass at least 3 biometric locks to get there." "And you still have clearance?" Daniel asked. Duran's grin was hollow. "Number. But I have a copy of someone who did." He produced a metal syringe from his coat and injected it into the access panel. For a moment, nothing happened. Then the door hissed open. The air inside was colder, not just in temperature, but in weight. A silence that wasn't absence, but suppression. "This is where the truth lives," Duran muttered. "Everything the Council didn't want anyone to know. War crimes, betrayals, internal dissent. Things they did even to their own species." Daniel felt a slow rage crawl up his spine. "Let's rip it open." The vault chamber was enormous. Dozens of hexagonal columns extended from floor to ceiling, each humming with light and data. Duran moved fast, interfacing with the master console at the far end. Silo deployed a security net around them while Marek stood watch. "This thing houses petabytes of encoded logs," Duran explained. "It'll take hours to copy. But I'm not just copying. I'm injecting a live virus that'll piggyback on Council-wide network updates. Once we leave, it spreads." Daniel stepped beside him. "What's in it?" Duran paused. "Let's find out." He tapped a command. One of the columns dimmed, revealing a playback screen. The first video showed an Earth colony, lush, full of life. Children played near a food station. Council envoys smiled at the camera. Then the scene shifted. The envoys left. The food stations shut down. Armed drones patrolled the perimeter. The colonists began to die. No reason was given. No war. No protest. Just starvation. A caption blinked on the screen. Reclassified test environment. Subject: Resource withdrawal compliance. Daniel turned away, fists clenched. Another file loaded. This one a meeting log between high-ranking council members. "We can't risk another uprising like on Earth," one of them said. "The humans are dangerous when cornered. Best to fragment their systems, keep their leaders in exile, make sure they fight each other instead of us." Another nodded. "And if they survive?" The first one laughed. "Then they'll be too broken to matter." Daniel's voice was low. "Upload it. Every file, every lie, every crime." Duran nodded, hands flying over the console. "Give me 10 minutes. But 10 minutes was too long. Ray's voice snapped over the comm. "Movement. 1 floor up. Drones, pattern sweep. We're compromised." Marek raised his weapon. "We can hold them." Daniel grabbed his radio. "Negative. Silo, prep the charges. We delete the vault. No evidence left behind." Duran froze. "What? That data—" Daniel grabbed his collar. "It's already uploading. We don't need this place. We need out." Silo placed the charges. Ray dropped 3 drones with clean shots through the shaft opening. Marek held the rear, blasting another with his pulse rifle. Duran scrambled to extract the final encryption key. Alarms screamed. Lights turned red. The vault began sealing. "We've got 60 seconds, Silo barked. Duran punched the last command, pulling the drive chip free and shoving it into Daniel's hand. "Take it. It's the backdoor key. If the virus fails, this can still open every eye in the galaxy. Move! Daniel shouted. They ran. Back through the shaft, through enemy fire. Ray took a shot to the shoulder but didn't slow. Merrick threw a sonic charge behind them that collapsed the hallway. Silo got hit in the leg. Daniel dragged him. The transport bay was in flames. But Archangel was there, cloaked, waiting, exactly where Kaz had promised. They boarded with seconds to spare. The vault exploded behind them, a silent burst of blue fire that vaporized the core. Daniel threw the chip to Ray. Get it to Velt. Tell him to release it when ready. And you? He looked out at the void. They started this war with silence. We're going to finish it with screams. The truth hit the galaxy like a meteor. It started as a whisper. Data packets smuggled into merchant channels, quietly passed between ships on fringe routes. Then came the encrypted leaks to neutral observers, the shady data journals, the outlaw comm bands. And then finally, Bastion made the decision to rip the lid off everything. The files Daniel and Duran pulled from Station Epsilon were more than just damning. They were nuclear. Holovids of forced sterilization camps on Earth's colonies. Classified council meetings approving famine as a containment tool. Direct orders to detain human diplomats and quietly remove them without trials. A secret protocol called Ashvale, which detailed how the Council planned to eliminate any human resurgence before it could threaten core worlds. Within 48 hours, dozens of fringe species called for emergency assemblies. Smuggling rings refused Council contracts. Even two mid-tier factions, the Talari and Koran syndicates, publicly denounced the Council and declared neutrality. The Council, of course, denied everything. They blamed radical human agitators, called the data fabricated, claimed it was deepfake tech. But no one believed them. Not after the documents showed file integrity stamps, official Council encryption codes that even their own systems couldn't fake. Daniel stood on the Archangel's bridge, watching the chaos unfold. The main screen showed news feeds from across the galaxy. Riots in diplomatic zones, military blockades crumbling, Council spokespeople being chased off neutral planets by mobs. It was everything they had fought for. But Daniel didn't smile, because the fire was spreading too fast. Ray stood beside him, arms crossed. Her wound was still healing, and the scar on her face gave her a colder look than usual. They're cracking, but so are we. He glanced at her. Explain. She handed him a data slate. Bastion's eastern cell just broke contact. Velt says they were ambushed. Someone tipped the Council. Daniel narrowed his eyes. Saboteurs? Or traitors, she said grimly. They're starting to panic, Daniel. Some of our allies want to hit another target. Others want to negotiate. We don't negotiate, he snapped. Ray didn't flinch. Then we may be alone soon. Daniel turned back to the screen. So be it. 2 days later, Daniel met with Velt face-to-face on Bastion 4, a rocky moon base dug into the side of a crater and shielded from orbital scans by dense metals and solar interference. Velt looked thinner, angrier. The pressure of leadership was starting to corrode his patience. We lost 3 supply freighters last week, Velt said, his voice gruff. Council dogs are patrolling with new stealth tech. We don't even see them coming. Daniel nodded. We need to start building outposts, places they can't touch. Velt shook his head. That takes time, people, trust, and right now trust is in short supply, even among our own. Daniel leaned forward. There's more. Velt sighed and rubbed his forehead. There's always more. Daniel placed the backdoor key drive, the one Duran had risked everything for, onto the table. This will get us into every system the Council still thinks is secure. Military traffic, surveillance logs, economic choke points. We hit their arteries next. Velt stared at the drive for a long time. You're escalating this into a full war. They declared war when they starved our colonies. Velt didn't argue, but then he added something that hit harder than Daniel expected. Duran's dead. Daniel blinked. What? They found his body yesterday, throat cut, dumped in a freight tube near Talon. Daniel's stomach turned. Duran had been a traitor, a coward, a bastard, but he hadn't deserved that. Not after what he'd done for them. I want to know who did it, Daniel said coldly. Velt shook his head. So do I. But right now we've got bigger problems. Someone's bleeding us from the inside. Back aboard the Archangel, the mood was tense. The crew had felt the shift. The early days of vengeance had given way to paranoia and fatigue. Every new face was suspect. Every ship that docked was scanned twice. Even Merrick had started sleeping with one eye open. Silo, the old engineer, said it best one night in the mess hall. "This ain't a revolution anymore," he muttered, sipping synthetic whiskey. "This is survival dressed up in fancy words, and survival turns good men into monsters." Daniel overheard it, but he didn't respond. Because he knew Silo was right. They weren't building a future. They were tearing the old world down and praying something better rose from the ashes. Then came the message. Broadcast wideband. Uncoded. Bold. "This is Council Admiral Theon Brax, speaking on behalf of the Galactic Preservation Authority. Effective immediately, all ships aiding or abetting human insurgents will be treated as hostiles. Your outposts will be neutralized. Your leaders captured. There will be no mercy. And to the human vessel, Archangel, you have 72 hours to surrender your commander, Daniel Reich. If you do not, your world dies screaming." Ray slammed her fist on the console when she heard it. "They're going after Earth." Daniel stood in silence, face unreadable. Marek cursed under his breath. "We left Earth to survive. Now they want to finish the job." Daniel nodded slowly. "Then we stop them." He turned to Ray. "Get me eyes on their fleet. I want every route, every backup system, every jump gate." Ray hesitated. "You're not going back to Earth, are you?" Daniel looked her dead in the eyes. "I never left." The battle for Earth was never going to be fair. Within 48 hours, dozens of fringe species called for emergency assemblies. Smuggling rings refused council contracts. Even two mid-tier factions, the Talari and Corin syndicates, publicly denounced the council and declared neutrality. The council, of course, denied everything. They blamed radical human agitators, called the data fabricated, claimed it was deep fake tech. But no one believed them. Not after the documents showed file integrity stamps, official council encryption codes that even their own systems couldn't fake. Daniel stood on the Archangel's bridge, watching the chaos unfold. The main screen showed news feeds from across the galaxy. Riots in diplomatic zones, military blockades crumbling, council spokespeople being chased off neutral planets by mobs. It was everything they had fought for. But Daniel didn't smile. Because the fire was spreading too fast. Ray stood beside him, arms crossed. Her wound was still healing, and the scar on her face gave her a colder look than usual. "They're cracking. But so are we." He glanced at her. "Explain." She handed him a data slate. "Bastion's eastern cell just broke contact. Velt says they were ambushed. Someone tipped the council." Daniel narrowed his eyes. "Saboteurs? Or traitors?" she said grimly. "They're starting to panic, Daniel. Some of our allies want to hit another target. Others want to negotiate." "We don't negotiate," he snapped. Ray didn't flinch. "Then we may be alone soon." Daniel turned back to the screen. "So be it." 2 days later, Daniel met with Velt face-to-face on Bastion 4, a rocky moon base dug into the side of a crater and shielded from orbital scans by dense metals and solar interference. Velt looked thinner, angrier. The pressure of leadership was starting to corrode his patience. "We lost 3 supply freighters last week," Velt said, his voice gruff. "Council dogs are patrolling with new stealth tech. We don't even see them coming." Daniel nodded. "We need to start building outposts, places they can't touch." Velt shook his head. "That takes time. People. Trust. And right now, trust is in short supply, even among our own." Daniel leaned forward. "There's more." Velt sighed and rubbed his forehead. "There's always more." Daniel placed the backdoor key drive, the one Duran had risked everything for, onto the table. "This will get us into every system the Council still thinks is secure. Military traffic, surveillance logs, economic choke points. We hit their arteries next." Velt stared at the drive for a long time. "You're escalating this into a full war." "They declared war when they starved our colonies." Velt didn't argue, but then he added something that hit harder than Daniel expected. "Duran's dead." Daniel blinked. "What?" "They found his body yesterday, throat cut, dumped in a freight tube near Telan." Daniel's stomach turned. Duran had been a traitor, a coward, a bastard, but he hadn't deserved that, not after what he'd done for them. "I want to know who did it," Daniel said coldly. Velt shook his head. "So do I. But right now we've got bigger problems. Someone's bleeding us from the inside." Back aboard the Archangel, the mood was tense. The crew had felt the shift. The early days of vengeance had given way to paranoia and fatigue. Every new face was suspect. Every ship that docked was scanned twice. Even Merrick had started sleeping with one eye open. Silo, the old engineer, said it best one night in the mess hall. "This ain't a revolution anymore," he muttered, sipping synthetic whiskey. "This is survival dressed up in fancy words, and survival turns good men into monsters." Daniel overheard it, but he didn't respond. Because he knew Silo was right. They weren't building a future. They were tearing the old world down and praying something better rose from the ashes. Then came the message. Broadcast wideband. Uncoded. Bold. "This is Council Admiral Theon Brax, speaking on behalf of the Galactic Preservation Authority. Effective immediately, all ships aiding or abetting human insurgents will be treated as hostiles. Your outposts will be neutralized. Your leaders captured. There will be no mercy. And to the human vessel Archangel, you have 72 hours to surrender your commander, Daniel Reich. If you do not, your world dies screaming." Ray slammed her fist on the console when she heard it. "They're going after Earth." Daniel stood in silence, face unreadable. Marek cursed under his breath. "We left Earth to survive. Now they want to finish the job." Daniel nodded slowly. "Then we stop them." He turned to Ray. "Get me eyes on their fleet. I want every route, every backup system, every jump gate." Ray hesitated. "You're not going back to Earth, are you?" Daniel looked her dead in the eyes. "I never left." The battle for Earth was never going to be fair. The Council's Black Fleet was already en route, a dozen Dreadnought-class carriers, equipped with orbital shatter cannons and high-atmo bombers. Their plan wasn't occupation. It was erasure. But Daniel had other plans. He contacted every surviving human ship, every exiled fleet, every outpost. He called in every favor, every debt, every ounce of loyalty that had been forged in blood. And they answered. Within a day, over 40 ships rallied. Frigates, corvettes, even old mining vessels refitted with plasma cores and railguns. Not a proper fleet. But enough. Enough to make history. They set course for Earth, engines burning hot through the void. Daniel stood on the bridge, watching his homeworld grow larger on the screen. The blue was faded, the green was withered. But it was still Earth, still home. He reached for the comms. "To every soul still standing," he said, his voice firm, hard, and filled with fire. "We were exiled, starved, broken. But we're still here. We're not fighting for revenge anymore. We're fighting for what comes next." He paused. "Let them come. Let them bring their fleets, their laws, their false gods. We're not afraid of the dark anymore." He looked at Marek. "Prepare for impact." Because no matter what happened next, win or lose, the galaxy would never forget what humanity did when it was pushed too far. The stars above Earth were no longer still. From orbit, the once familiar constellations were blurred by movement, dozens of ships carving trails of light, exhaust, and fury into the void. The Black Fleet loomed overhead, a celestial executioner, its hulls blacker than the void around them, armed with weaponry designed not for war, but obliteration. But between them and Earth stood humanity. Ragtag, unwanted, outnumbered, but not broken. The Archangel led the charge. Inside the bridge thrummed with energy. Daniel Reich stood at the center, wrapped in silence, watching the enemy form up like a wall of death. His face was hollowed by months of war and sleepless nights, but his eyes burned with something sharper than rage. "Purpose." "Report," he ordered. Marek's voice was calm. "Black Fleet's in full deployment. 12 dreadnoughts, 14 frigates, fighter wings forming up. They're not waiting." "Let them come," Daniel said. "Human fleet's moving into formation," Ray confirmed. 3 sectors in full sync. Bastion reinforcements arriving in 5 minutes. Daniel looked at her. "Tell them to hold the flanks. We cut straight through." Her brow furrowed. "That'll leave us exposed." "I know." He turned towards the forward screen. Earth slowly filled the frame, beautiful and battered. A planet that had once begged for salvation, now standing as the battleground for the truth. He opened the comms. "This is Captain Daniel Reich, Earthborn, exiled by force. Today we take back what they tried to bury. This is not about hate. This is about memory. We remember who we are. We remember what they did. And we are done running." He closed the comm and said quietly, "Fire all forward weapons." Archangel surged ahead like a wounded predator. The first Council frigate tried to intercept. It never had a chance. A twin barrage of railgun slugs tore through its midsection, followed by pulse torpedoes that turned its engines into plasma fountains. The human fleet followed, dozens of ships diving into chaos with the desperation of survivors and the fury of the betrayed. All around them, the sky cracked open. Fighters screamed through narrow gaps, tearing into each other in tight dogfights. Frigates collided, exploded, and spun into the upper atmosphere like broken bones. Lasers cut across darkness like divine wrath. The Council deployed their orbital shatter cannons, but human ships darted, flared, countered. Every time a ship went down, another rose to take its place. Daniel barked orders, his voice clear above the madness. "Flank right! Shield the carriers! Redirect power to the aft guns!" Ray relayed commands, blood trickling from a gash near her ear. "We've got a breach on Deck 3, fire suppression failing." "Silo!" Daniel roared into the comms. "Get your team to the breach! We hold this line or we burn!" A moment later, Silo's voice came through, rough and hoarse. "Deck 3 contained, patching the hull. Don't crash this ship till I get back to my whiskey." Daniel allowed himself a small grin, but the grin vanished when the first dreadnought opened fire. The beam lanced out, a stream of plasma and antimatter, slicing a Bastion destroyer clean in half. Another volley followed, this time aimed directly at Archangel. "Incoming!" Marek shouted. The crew braced. The blast struck the starboard side, tearing through armor plating like wet paper. The ship spun, alarms howling, consoles sparking, bodies were thrown. Ray slammed into the railing, barely grabbing hold. Daniel hit the floor hard. His ears rang. Smoke filled the bridge, but they didn't stop. Stabilize the spin, he growled, pulling himself upright. Return fire. Hit that thing in the throat. Archangel's railguns fired again, this time guided manually, aimed at a vulnerable seam along the dreadnought's lower hull. The shot struck true. The dreadnought shuddered. Secondary explosions rippled across its body. One of its reactors burst, sending debris spiraling into the void. Cheers erupted across the bridge, ragged, desperate cheers. But Daniel didn't join them. Not yet. There were still 11 more. The battle raged for over an hour, a brutal, ceaseless storm of fire and steel. Human ships sacrificed themselves to protect Earth's orbital defense rings. Kamikaze strikes took down 2 more Council vessels. Bastion deployed boarding pods into one of the dreadnoughts, triggering internal sabotage that turned its own guns against its fleet. Daniel watched the enemy break apart. Not just physically, but psychologically. They were used to control, not resistance. Now they faced a people with nothing left to lose, and that made them dangerous. Finally, the Council flagship, Virelian Prime, pulled back. Their retreat was silent. No surrender, no message, just shame. And silence. 2 days later, Earth was quiet. The skies still burned in places, but the Black Fleet was gone. What was left of the human fleet floated in high orbit, damaged, mourning, but victorious. On the ground, people emerged from shelters and bunkers. They looked to the skies not with fear, but with awe. Someone had fought for them, and won. Daniel stood on the surface, boots sinking into old Earth soil. The crater where New Geneva once stood smoldered in the distance. Ruins, scars, memories. Ray walked up beside him, one arm in a sling. The Council broadcast a message an hour ago. Daniel looked at her. They want a ceasefire, she said. Talks, negotiations. They're calling it a humanitarian solution. He laughed, not with joy, but disbelief. After everything they did? She shrugged. They've lost control. The outer sectors are turning. Some of their own species are demanding tribunals. Daniel stared at the sky. What do you want to do? She asked. He didn't answer right away. Because he didn't know. For months, years, all he'd wanted was vengeance. Now that he had it, what was left? But when he looked at the people climbing out of the bunkers, hugging, rebuilding, burying their dead, he knew. We rebuild, he said finally. We make something better. Not because we forgive them, but because we deserve better. Ray nodded. And the Council? Daniel's eyes hardened. They'll answer. In time. The galaxy's awake now. We'll make sure it remembers. He turned, walking towards the command shuttle. There were trials to plan, a new alliance to form, a future to build, one not handed down by rulers in ivory towers, but forged by exiles who refused to die. In the end, humanity wasn't saved. It saved itself. Not with mercy, but with fire. And now the stars belonged to them.